It all started a few months ago when my friend John, or Jack Sabrin, who volunteers for my organization as a crime victims advocate in the probation department every Wednesday, talked to me about his friends who love to do metal detecting. And the story that unfolded was delicious enough for me to call Gene Schneider to my left and talk about things that he's done with Morris Landry, who's over at my far left. How are you, gentlemen?
Good.
Fine.
And we talked about finding class rings. And everybody loves to find out about buried treasure. And how many times as little kids have we seen advertised on cereal boxes, heard on the radio and newspaper, magazine articles, send 3 box tops and 6 bits and get a treasure map. And boy, we thought we were going to get real treasures. Mm-hmm. And what we didn't realize is there were 6 million maps sent out to 6 million kids. But all those great old pirate stories of Captain Kidd and Blackbeard and all of those things as kids. And guess what? As we grow older, we like to go and fulfill some of those childhood fantasies. And everybody who knows me knows that Kay bought me what was then a state-of-the-art metal detector many, many years ago, and I wasn't ever smart enough to figure out how to use it very well. And Kay was very smart psychically, and she could walk along the beach and kick up lots of money, and I'd maybe find 3 bottle caps and some useless piece of trash. So that was the end of the metal detector. But then I heard about Gene Schneider, and so we called him on the telephone and said, do you mind if I write about you in my column, which I did, and that'll be in the paper, or probably by the time you see this, it's already been in the paper. But then he was gracious enough to invite us out to his home here on Point of Rush. Not far, you're not far from the lake, Gene, right?
No, about an eighth of a mile.
Eighth of a mile?
Back.
Yeah. Almost.
Yeah, just at the public boat launch is right down here.
Oh, it is, not very far away. The road has changed since I first came in here. You don't make the same turns that you did to get to Marine Village when I first came here in 1961, believe me. So I want to get into this stuff. I want to see all this stuff on the table. This was all buried in the ground or under the water, right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
And over the last, how many years?
About 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, about 3 years. I've been retired 3 years. Morris has been retired longer than that. But
well, we're going to find a little bit about who you guys were, where you came from, how you came to be here in the North Country, and how you got involved in finding all these treasures. I just looked around, and boy, if you brought a little kid in here, their eyes would be about 4 miles wide as they looked around and saw all these paper. And some of these coins are worn right to a frazzle. They've been underground for a long time. We'll find out about the oldest thing. We'll find out about one of the most unique things. That's a skull and crossbones, kids. What do you think it means? We'll find out about a lot of stuff on our little corner. Stay tuned. Well, I guess I can repeat that. Some things I can't repeat that we say when the camera's off, but Morris said I was on the side of the table that wasn't worth much, so we'll just have to let whatever happens in our conversation over the next hour or so bear that out for us. This is a blast. This is so much fun. What a wonderful hobby. I want to find out a little bit about the gentleman behind the hobby. First of all, since you're closer to me, Gene, I'd like to find out where you were born and brought up.
I'm from Philadelphia.
Who was it that said I'd rather be in Philadelphia?
W.C. Fields.
Yeah, I'd rather be in Philadelphia.
Supposedly on his gravestone, better here than in Philadelphia.
On the whole, I'd rather be in Philadelphia.
On the whole, I'd rather be in Philadelphia. Calvin's got it right down pat. He knows those things. So, all right, you grew up in Philadelphia, went to school there?
Yeah.
Then what?
Well, I was here with the Air Force back in the 60s, from 61 through 65.
You came here right about when I did, 61.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with those missile squadrons they had around here.
How well we remember the Atlas missile sites and General Dynamics astronautics changed the whole face of the economic picture here in the North Country for many years.
Oh, yeah.
And then 65, you bailed out?
Yeah.
Transferred somewhere?
Yeah, I went to Pennsylvania and then Connecticut, and then I come up here later on, and I ran into my wife at the time, or my girlfriend, old girlfriend at the time, and then we got married a couple years later, and then we went to Pennsylvania,
Keep going back,
Ohio,
don't you, to Pennsylvania? Huh?
Denver, back to Pennsylvania, and then we came up here, and I went to work for the Department of Correction.
I knew you did some teaching for them, or
Yeah,
what did you do?
yeah, I was an instructor.
Vocations?
Yeah, I was an instructor for them at Clinton, and then when they opened Altona, I went to Altona as the vocational school supervisor over there, and stayed there until I retired.
And that's how you ran into our mutual friend.
Oh, John, yeah,
Sabre.
Altona Jack, yes. Yeah, he was. I worked for John. Well, I knew John from over there, and then we've always stayed in touch. And
He's a good guy and a good friend, and of course,
interesting character.
I go back far enough to have known his dad, the late Frenchie Sabrin, very well, and his brother Bill, who's a city councilor now, who happens to live in the house that was once occupied by our oldest son and his wife before they were killed in a car crash in 1988. So there are family connections all over and of course I know Dick and the whole family.
Yeah, Dick used to work with us. He used to teach summer school up there with us, and we knew him from there.
So you touched the North Country enough times so you wanted to come back here to retire and work and retire the last, how many years of your career?
Oh, about 30, I think.
Really, that many, huh?
Yeah. Since 74, they gave me credit for some veteran time and some other things, so it worked out fine.
That's great. And you certainly picked a beautiful spot here out at Point of Rush. Was that by chance, or did you look a long time before you found this great house? Property?
No, this was a cow field, and
Really?
this farm was part of a farm that my father-in-law owned, and we got the land from him, and we built the house in '74. And so we've been here since '74, and it was a lot more houses out here now, but it's
Well, I
still-
guess there are. Everything's changed out
yeah,
there.
it's still rather rural. It's nice enough that nice and quiet. And we
Except for today, we get stirred up a little bit with the hometown cable camera and Calvin and everybody.
Father-in-law's name?
Huh?
Father-in-law's name?
Father-in-law.
Oliver Landry. and my brother-in-law Morris lives around the corner. I couldn't do anything about that. They were.
But keep your stuff on that side of the table, right, Morris?
I stayed out of his neighborhood.
I love it. Well, you're a North Country boy then, right,
Yeah, I
Morris?
was brought up, I was born in Cooperville, and I was brought up in Point of Rush.
They can't hold Cooperville against you. That's
No,
okay.
brought up in Point of Rush, and been here ever since. I
So
like
you're
it
pretty
here.
familiar with this country over
Yeah,
here.
yes. Yeah.
It's a beautiful spot. I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful spot. Was when I came here, still is, in spite of all the changes, huh?
Yeah, it's a great place to grow up and a great place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
As we've all found out, Calvin's a native of the northern tier up around Ridge Road in Champlain. So, did you guys get interested in the metal detector thing around the same time, or who started this whole routine? You did.
I've always been interested. Many years ago, I built a machine.
I should have known. This guy's a computer genius
Well,
who could probably put this house on wheels so it'd float across the
I
pasture
wish.
if he wanted to.
I made one many years ago, probably 30 years ago, and it worked, but it probably could. If you buried a Buick on the lawn, I might be able to
Maybe you
find
could
it.
find it. That's like me with mine.
It wasn't terribly sensitive. And so ever since then, I've always been very interested in them. Then, along with computers, they've got, when I read about them, they've got more and more sophisticated in what they're able to do compared to the old minesweepers that they originated back right before World War II.
That's right too.
They were, you were playing with fire. You mess with those in a minefield. And what they do now is incredible. So when I retired, I bought one, and I started doing it around with it. And I got a hold of another one, and Morris went with me a couple times and took off from there.
You get the bug.
Mm.
It's easy to get the bug.
Sure is.
Oh,
And
it is.
it's a relatively inexpensive hobby. Of course, you can pay a little bit for for the new machines now, right? But you have several.
I've got three, but they kind of come and go. I'm going to sell one on eBay, but it isn't that terribly expensive once you get the equipment. It's you just go out and look around.
Are there any clubs up here, or do you guys kind of just do it on your own? You
I
don't
don't think so.
you don't want to
Not
share
that I
the
know
wealth
of.
with other people? There are. I see magazines once in a while in the magazine store about people who are out with metal detectors and treasure magazines and all that stuff.
There are a lot of them, but I don't think there's any around here. There's a vast network on the internet of places where you can, correspond with different people. If you find something that you want to get identified, and you want information about how to modify a detector, how to change it to make it do different things, so you get the benefits of the club that way. Communication's real good.
So you've always been interested in electronics then, right?
Yeah.
So do you build your own computers?
I have, yeah. I have one downstairs.
I should've
I made in 1981. I still
Come
have
on.
it. No, I still have it. Not terribly
Whoa.
powerful, but
I don't even know if I know what the word computer meant in 1981.
well,
Is it? And you still have it, of course.
oh yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Not
it's-
that you're a pack rat or anything, right?
Well, that's, I am. I don't get rid of much. I just.
I don't. How about you? You save a lot of stuff for us.
Not really. Except this stuff. I never got rid of any of this.
So do you always go together? Do you once in a while?
No,
venture off on
we
your
go
own?
together a lot, but at times he's busy or I'm busy, and we go off on our own.
Yeah, I'm sure this is fascinating for young people, but people
Yeah.
of all ages, because when you stop to think about it, all this stuff on this table is just a tiny, teeny little infinitesimal fraction of the stuff that's buried under the ground.
Oh, it's amazing.
And that's at the bottom of Lake Champlain, because some of the stuff you found was underwater. So think about it. I got interested in diving with Frank Pabst and the old Wreck Raiders way back many years ago, and we know what tremendous history we have around here. And a lot of the fun of finding an object is determining, number one, what the heck is this thing? Where did it come from, and what's its history? And that becomes a real odyssey to go and find the
Oh, yeah.
origin of it.
A lot of things you can't identify. You get an idea. If it has a patent number, there's a way of looking them up through the U.S. Patent Office so you can view the drawings. Or what I do a lot of times, if I find something that I don't know what it is, I'll take a photo of it and I'll post it to these different groups. And then the guys all over the country this is very big in Europe. The Europeans will write over and tell you this is what this is and where it came from and who made it.
So you've actually
Oh, yeah.
discovered things that way.
Yeah. Nothing of any tremendous value, though.
But you know what? The value, it's
Something-
like everything else in life, the value is in the
Oh, yeah.
quest, in finding it.
Sometimes it tells you the age, and that makes it
gives you a
valuable.
clue.
It gives you an idea that's more valuable if something's been around for 100 years or
But
so.
probably sometimes you just wonder where's your Italian coin? We were down in front of on Scamotion Creek, almost
Now, who would guess?
by.
Wow, I can barely
Almost
see
near
that. That
Skamo-
baby is worn out. I don't know if Calvin can get a shot of it.
It wasn't too far from Route 9, right over there.
I think it's in 1861, I believe.
But
You
that's
actually saw a date on it,
Yeah,
Morris?
there
There's a
is-
date on
is
it.
one on there.
Yeah. There's a
It
date on
must
it.
be
With
a lot-
magnifying glass, you
It's
can
in
see it. It's old, 1861.
Italian centini coin. Now, what was that coin doing there? You know?
Don't you wish you could just read
How'd that get-
between the lines and find out, okay, some Italian count came up here and
Yeah.
stopped at Scamotion Creek? Well, I'm sure that
somebody
the
probably-
Italians weren't the original Quakers. I can almost promise
Probably-
you that.
Probably brought back from a war or something, eh?
Well, you guys have found quite a few things down in that area. We're going to talk a lot more about that because these people just don't go out and dig a hole in the ground. They get old time maps. You can be fairly scientific about this thing when you do it, right?
Yeah, to try and find out where the houses used to be or the foundations used to be, and go to those areas and see what you can find.
who can remember the first thing they ever found with a metal detector? Can either one of you remember the first thing was, the first thing that wasn't a bottle cap or something? Coins, maybe?
Probably was. More than likely, it was a coin. Coins are pretty prevalent. They're pretty much all over.
Well, who does? My wife is, without a metal detector, she'll pick up, we'll walk to the store and she'll pick up 13 cents along the way,
Mm-hmm.
And she has this uncanny ability of finding, especially quarters, because
Oh,
they're
yeah.
more expensive than pennies. So we'll be walking in the pitch dark and she'll reach down and pick up a quarter and I'll say, how did you? I don't know. Yeah, anyway, you were like I am. You're fidget. I'm fidgeting. I have somebody tell me the other day, do you know that your hands are always moving on television? You're always. Calvin reminded me after I broke about 6 of these cords, I just broke the wiring off by playing with them, and I've tried to be patient. But here is a very fascinating, articulated piece of silver, we would guess, and it looks like some kind of a creature. If it had 100 legs, we'd know it was a centipede. And they asked me when I walked in what I guessed it was. And I deal with interesting people in the course of my job, and just because I'm interested in interesting people. And I've seen people wearing things like this on their hands, and it's articulated so you could put it on your pinky or another finger and bend your finger. And I'm guessing that's what it was. And it was probably made for somebody, although, who found this? Which of you?
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
Where? Do you know?
The city beach in the sand.
Well, that's been a popular place
Yeah.
for a long time, and the city dump was down there, not too far from there, as you know, some time ago, so you're liable to find anything. And perhaps
Yeah.
some Canadian visitor, some young woman from Montreal came down here, and it just slipped off.
So
But
you-
that's got to be one of the most unique things you guys have ever found.
Are you ruling out Samuel D. Champlain's armor?
Gosh,
That pretty much.
Very possible.
nothing would please me more than to find out that was pinky armor. We'll start a vicious rumor here, and I'm sure we'll get telephone calls. You are a bunch of idiots because you know that belongs to. I'm guessing it's a ring, but it looks like sterling silver to me. Not that I would.
It looks like silver to me.
Was it that shiny when you
Yeah,
dug it up?
it was just like that when I took it out. It was down about 4 inches.
Now-
Just like that.
I got to find out something because when I talked to Gene on the telephone previous to writing this column, I hope I embarrass him horribly this Sunday. But when I talked to him on the telephone, he was telling me that the modern metal detectors, you call them metal detectors, right? Because that's what they detect is metal, are far different in what they tell you and how they indicate it when you found something. Not just sound anymore, right?
No.
Tell me.
Well, the one that I use, it has the ability to, you can set it up to eliminate certain things. Like I can eliminate certain alloys, like aluminum. Most of them do that. It has the ability to judge the ground and eliminate the effects of the minerals in the ground. It'll give you an audio indication that something is there. It'll tell you what it thinks it is. It'll tell you how deep it is. It'll tell you like probability of what it should be. Because they have microprocessors in them now. So what they do, they take all the information and they calculate it, and then they'll give you what they think the answer is.
What do you get? A word? A picture? What do you get?
Yeah, well, I'll get numbers, which are like alloy numbers, and then
wow.
I'll get a sound, and I'll get a bar graph. Excuse me. Then I'll get an indication that'll tell me what it is. But it's a lot like fishing. You know,
I was going to say
it-
fish finder, right?
Yeah, but just because you got the right lure, a good rod, and you get a bite, doesn't mean you're going to get that beautiful largemouth bass. There are more boots out there than there are fish, you know. So
Why? I don't know why that is, but
Yeah.
you're probably true. But it's fun.
oh yeah.
You, Morris, how many do you own? One, two?
Just one. I
Just
got
one.
one.
One's enough.
One's enough.
Yours breaks, you can always borrow his.
He's got a bunch. He's got the, so that's how I got started anyway. He let me borrow one. And I found one for sale, a pretty good one, so I bought that.
You know, I notice wherever I go, I look for things like that. And I love to go where there's water and beaches.
Mhm.
So I go to Myrtle Beach, and every morning, bright and early when the sun comes up, there's 2 or 3 guys
Oh,
down there
Mhm.
checking the beach out for stuff that people lost, like watches and rings the day before. Same thing in Hawaii, same thing in Florida, same thing in Mexico, wherever you go, somebody's out there doing it. And I don't know if they ever, I would imagine, they find a few things on a beach.
We Morris and I goof around, but it's almost like our goal when we go out is never come back empty-handed. Sometimes we find maybe only 1 or 2 things, but I bet you the number of times I've come back with nothing is pretty limited.
Yeah.
It depends on where we go, too. But
You know, I wouldn't be surprised that if you do this enough, you almost get a sixth sense of, well, that looks like a good place right over there.
yeah, I try that, and I don't know that it works, but
Well, you know, that's not a bad way to do it. By
Yeah,
getting
but-
the maps. I think we ought to show these maps. I'll show them one at a time and you can tell me what they are. First of all, this map of Plattsburgh without the H is from you've been kind enough to write what year it was.
yeah, that's 1943.
Where would you find stuff like this?
Well, I was talking to my son and my son-in-law, and said, "Boy, I got to find some better older maps of the area." And my son said, "Well, let me look around, see if I can figure out where you would go." So a couple of days later, he sent me an email, and he told me to connect up to the server at the University of New Hampshire.
Huh, wow.
And the University of New Hampshire has an archive of all the old maps dating from New England, upstate New York, dating back to I think that the first ones are like 1880, and then there's a 1943, 56 version, and you can pull them right down. So I went and got all those, and
Just download it off the computer.
yeah.
They're available for anybody.
But the thing is, they'll show you when you compare the maps. That happens to be 1943, and you look at Scamotion Creek there. As I pointed out, it labels Scamotion Creek as a CCC camp, which is
I saw that.
that Civilian
And it was,
Conservation
and I guess
Corps.
I knew that.
World
How
War,
did that
World
time
War,
period?
or no, that was pre-World War II, right after the
Sure,
Depression.
Yeah.
And then it shows you where houses were, where the dots, individual dots were.
And
It
there were only a
shows,
couple of shown at Scamotion Creek
Sure.
at that time.
you go back 1906, and there were 30, 40 homes out there. Now they're completely gone.
You know, let me get the next map of the same area, but much, much earlier, 1906.
Yeah, so
Calvin shows us Scamotion Creek. Wow.
and you look at the number of dots there, and you don't know what kind of buildings they were, whether they were homes or what. And I blow them up again, and you can pretty much get the location. Morris and I have come across foundations, and you can walk out there and you can find out, if you know where to look, you can find out where the foundations were, where the barns were, and then 30 years later they're gone.
Well, the face of that area has changed a lot. As a matter of fact, the direction of the creek has changed. That whole area has changed, and the roadways, and
Name is
the name has changed. You know, when you look at it and you see Dead Creek coming down there, for example, I've talked about that in my column. And you're right. There were homes. There were stores. There were cabins.
School.
There was the school, which was still there way up into the 1960s. I've talked many times before about covering my first election when I went to work at a radio station. 1961 or 1962, probably the election, and going there and going into the school without even, I don't think they even had electric lights, and the ladies who were election officials were arguing over the ballots. They were all hand ballots. And I was supposed to stay there. My instruction was to stay there until I got the number of votes for whatever the candidates were. So I stayed there. And I stayed there. And the ladies talked about everything except the election. And suddenly they closed up the box and locked it, and they were out of there. When I went back to the radio station, I almost had a very short tenure at the radio station because I did not come back with the election results. So that was my connection with the school, and since I've written about it, people have been kind enough to send me old, very old photographs of that school, and I've talked to many people who went to that schoolhouse, and so that's a lot of fun. So you found a few things right around this Commotion Creek area.
Yeah, we'll go back there and wander around there, and we just pick a place and go try and chase it down. And
But you know, there are very few square inches of ground in Clinton County that didn't have something going on there sometime in history. When you think that before we were here, the Native Americans were traipsing through here, and a lot of summer camps for Native Americans, and think of all the military stuff that happened here.
we find a lot of military buttons. Yeah,
Like,
Air
show me a
Force.
military button, for example. I'll look at these other maps in a minute. Morris, what do you
We've got
got?
a couple laying around here.
3 of them, I guess I've picked up.
All right, certainly don't want to get them on our cheaper side of the table here, whatever happens, but, oh boy, that's a familiar eagle, isn't it?
Yeah.
What would you guess that came off of? Any idea?
No idea. No idea.
Could have been anything, could have been button on a uniform, or most
Could have
likely
been.
a cap.
Yeah.
That one's,
No, they're
oh, this one's a little flatter.
Yeah.
Somebody stepped on it or ran over it, or something. Most of them have a loop. They're attached by a loop at the back. And the other one is right here. They have writing on. Some of them have writing on.
Yeah, on the back usually, who made it.
You can get ages. One of them we found the date
This
on.
is the
We-
one-
That one there?
This is the one you sort of got the information for me.
Did you like
This
what?
is I found that
Oh,
under.
wait a minute. I don't see anything.
You don't see anything, but on the back there's a company that made it.
You gotta be kidding me. And it looks
And,
like
uh,
leaves around the back, around the outside. If you can determine that there's something on that front side, you've got better eyesight than
Well,
I've got.
Gene found out that he went on the internet. He posted it, and who made it? And it was made in a company out of Boston, wasn't it?
I think it was New England somewhere.
And it was made about 200 years ago. So that's
Come on.
No, that one there, that's very, very
the,
old.
com- the
New
company.
England what? Sunwear?
Whatever the name on the back was, I went to these groups and I put the name of the manufacturer, and then the people wrote back and said, send me another close-up picture, and there's a mark on them. There's a whole network of people that collect military
And,
buttons, and he was
Oh, there
looking
are.
at
And
this.
that was a gold-plated button, but it had been underground so long that the gold is gone. But he picked it up with his camera. It'll
Yeah.
show the flecks of
The
gold
flex?
in there.
You gotta be
Yeah.
kidding.
That thing was so
Gold-plated.
deep. I was expecting a backhoe to come in there when he was digging that. It was next to a cedar tree. Remember that?
I went down under a
That sucker
cedar,
had to be
cedar
12
tree that
inches
big. And I went way under the tree to get it. My detector would
In
sense,
in
said
the
there was
roots of
something
the-
in there. And I had to go in between the roots, and I finally got it out. I worked on it probably 20 minutes. Finally come up with the button.
Well, you know, to our viewers,
Yeah,
that old button
Yeah.
may look like a piece of trash.
that's all it is.
No, well, it is not. To me, it's a treasure. That is a real, absolute
Yeah.
treasure. I love things
I'll never
like
forget
that.
it.
It would be
because
a
of the way
treasure.
we got it, you know.
If I found it, it would be a treasure. If Morris found it,
Okay,
no.
here we go. But you know, if you know something's there and you can't find it right away, you go a little crazy. I want to know what equipment you bring with you. When you go out metal detecting, what do you bring to dig with? A shovel or a sharp object or what? A bag?
Yeah, I just have just like a trowel, and then I have I usually take a big knife, that if I have to cut some roots or something like that. And usually or you don't want to disturb anything, the big knife will just cut a circle out of the sod,
Yeah.
lift it up and get what you want and put everything back down. Because we don't leave any messes. Any place we've been, you can't tell we've been there.
Yeah.
So we
That's
don't,
pretty good.
no, yeah, we
Because
don't make
some
a mess.
people are not so fastidious when they
Yeah.
go out with their metal detectors and it looks like a minefield when they finish.
That's
know?
true. We don't go any place that we're not supposed to. We get permission to go, and some people say no, and okay, fine.
Oh, yeah. And do your thing, and some people will say yeah.
Yeah.
And have you ever, my mind wanders a lot because I love this subject, But does anybody ever call you up and say, you know, my daughter lost her wedding ring. Can you come over here and check the backyard?
I had one from somebody I know in Chateaugay, and I said I would go look, and it was a ring I was looking for, and I couldn't find it. But I think she said she lost it many, many years ago, and I believe the road had been moved, or they had ditched the road or something, and so, you know, we can only do, in a good day, you can go 8, 10 inches.
I didn't know you could go that far.
I went as high as 18 inches for a penny.
I didn't say it was
Remember that?
worth it, Morris.
I was way down in there. I come up with a
You're
penny.
pretty sure it was a coin, probably.
Yeah, I showed
by
it. It
then.
was a coin. And I went down and I found a penny. It wasn't an old penny either. It was at the city beach, but everything gets turned all the time.
Well, you know, there aren't very many people who watch this program who aren't familiar with all the weird things that have happened in my life.
Yeah.
And Gene knows that when we were in Hawaii in April, earlier this year in 2004, I had my college ring from 1961 on my finger. It didn't fit my regular ring finger, so I had it on my pinky like I have my high school ring right now. I jumped into the surf right there on the island of Kauai, and you know, as soon as I hit the sand, the ring was gone.
Wow.
And there's no way when you're in 4 feet of water in a wild and woolly surf.
No.
I'm not sure that I could have found it with a metal detector at that point in time, because the ocean moves things so
Right,
fast,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
so absolutely fast.
Yeah.
So what's the most unique object, do you think? Who knows about the most unique object? I like that ring finger. I'll call it a pinky finger.
Pretty.
You got cigarettes?
You know what them are? Well, I didn't know when I dug them.
Oh, you dug those out of the ground? Come on. I know.
I
They're-
think this probably has something to do with it too. I'm not sure. But I think that's drug. I think that's
it's-
drug
I think
paraphernalia.
it's drug paraphernalia. I'm not going to hold it like I know how.
But I
Well,
think
I have
that,
smoked a lot of cigarettes in
I
my
think
lifetime.
that denotes use of drugs too. I'm not sure.
Isn't
That razor blade to
interesting?
make a line of coke or whatever they might do.
He knows a little bit too much about it too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? You found those down around the beach too?
Yeah.
Wowee.
Yeah.
See, I can't, I don't know if I would think about that if I dug this up,
No.
but I guess so. A razor blade, you know how it is when you cut
Yeah.
a line of coke.
Yeah.
Or I've read or seen about it. So those are unique items. Chain, several chains.
Got a musket ball.
Musket ball, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, we find
small
a
one, but
fair number of those. They're not that uncommon.
that's the only one I've ever.
Really
I'd be
not.
excited if I found one. I don't care what you say.
We found quite a few of those.
That's the only one I found. You
Really?
probably found more than I.
They're not absolutely round. That's the
That's
interesting
right.
part
They've
of it.
been
Now, this
forged.
one has a, it's forged, it's got a ridge around it.
Yeah.
I can feel the ridge going around it.
Mhm.
It was still smart if it hit you in the leg or anywhere else, I bet.
I'm
So
sure.
you found this one?
Yeah.
Where, Morris, do you know?
I think that's. I think that was around St. Armand's Beach.
You know, the interesting story, we've done so many historical pieces. This one is a great piece of history, but we just did one on Fort Montgomery.
Yeah.
And nearby Fort Blunder. And somebody in the 1950s, right, Calvin, found a musket there that had been there all those years, and nobody had found it until that time. And that cotton-picking musket still exists today, not in beautiful shape after being in the elements. It wasn't even buried. But it was on the property.
Wow.
And who would
Wow.
guess? And you don't even need a metal detector. Now, that would excite me if I walked around and saw kick that up under a bush, wouldn't you?
Wow.
Have you ever, either one of you or both of you, sought after real treasure? I mean, somebody said, I know some old guy buried $500,000 in a can, anything like that? Have you ever found a strong box under the ground or anything? That has yet to come. We'll probably hear the screams
even-
if you do.
Not even looking for it.
But you know what?
That'd
In
be
times past, people buried things. I guess you're aware of
Oh,
that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I talked about Oak Island.
Yeah.
That great mystery, even when I was a kid, everybody was going up and trying to dig down in Oak Island and found this pirate treasure that was buried and it kept caving in and people were getting killed and you know, the treasures of the Sierra Madre and all those treasures that these
Yeah.
people theoretically buried. Not our luck, I guess, right?
No.
To be on the trail of anything fantastic like that.
Yeah.
But there are other interesting items here. We're actually gonna have you describe the metal detectors themselves. An occasional earring. This is a piece of costume jewelry, right? Would you guess?
That looks like a real, genuine, very expensive emerald to me.
Wait a minute. It's on this side of the table. On this side of the table.
or maybe not.
You might end up with this stuck through your nose, Gene. I don't know. But I love it. But that wasn't made yesterday. Whatever it is, it wasn't made yesterday.
Yeah.
You do. That's a token of some kind, right? Would you guess?
Very valuable.
Very valuable. Why does it say no cash value on the other
Put
side?
that one down, Gordon.
I already looked at it. I'm sorry. At least it didn't say wooden nickel. But there are a number of foreign coins. What the heck is this
Why?
thing?
Yeah, there's a couple English there's an English half penny, and
I have no idea what that. What's this
I
one,
don't know
Kenny,
what
right?
that one is. I can't tell.
Yeah. They're English halfpenny. You got an
Yeah,
English halfpenny.
there's an English
That's
half
nice.
penny right here somewhere. Couple Sacagaweas and
And lots of buttons, lots of rings. You talked about now. This looks like a very expensive United States Air Force ring, and it's actually very, very light white metal. And these were available for purchase at the commissary
Yeah.
on the airbase when it existed here, and you've probably seen them there. And somebody lost these. Were they both near the same place, or?
no, one of them was up in the Ox Bowl, and I forget where I got the
Oh,
other
the
one.
famous Oxbow, for those people who aren't familiar, was a, shall we call it a party place up along the Kent
Yeah.
Falls Road,
Yeah.
not far from Morrisonville. And I'm totally familiar with it because I don't mind telling our viewers that when our kids were growing up, there were a lot of keg parties up there. So Kay and I spent a lot of nights on our knees praying that our kids made it home safely from parties because they dove from the bridge
Right.
and from the rocks up there in the Oxbow, and there have been drownings there over the years, so you can understand my concern. And rings of all kinds.
Yeah, I haven't really found the only one that I don't know. The stone fell off, and I don't really know whether that's a real diamond or not.
Oh, you got the stone.
I can't tell a real diamond
Well,
from
you certainly
glass.
can. There are lots of local jewelers that would tell you.
When I dug that up,
Let me
I
show.
hit it, and the stone came off with the knife blade.
Scratch the glass with it, and you'll
So I don't know.
Well, you can find out when the time is right. That's the only one with a.
if you can scratch glass with it, it's.
Is that the way Calvin knows this
Supposedly,
highly
yeah.
technical stuff? Calvin
Supposedly
knows.
that is true.
Okay, this is weird. This is extremely
It's some-
light. That's like aluminum.
Yeah, it's some kind of an SO token they gave out. When
It
I
is
don't
S.
know.
It says SO on it. Come on.
It could be back in who knows when they were giving those away. And when I uncovered that popped up. If you saw that buried in the dirt, I thought it was a $50 or a silver dollar.
It seems to me like it's some kind of a serpentine head on the other side.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I remember when.
That was it. Oh, there used to be a building on one of the maps that shows a house down by where Wilcox Dock is now. It's not there, and that's where it was. There's nothing there, just a little patch of
I was
dirt.
just looking at, for those of our viewers who don't know what Wilcox Dock is, it's a dock that's located off Cumberland Avenue, not too far from the Georgia Pacific Mill. And notice they've cut a lot of trees down. You're coming from the side of the mill, you can actually see right down to the dock now. I don't know if the city is planning to do something in that area, but it's certainly has changed with all those big
Yeah.
tree line taken out
They
of
cleaned it
there.
up quite a bit.
These are interesting.
They're Canadian coins.
Canadian coins with a coin within a coin.
Yeah, these are Canadian $2. Yeah,
Toonie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the toonies.
there for a while. They were big. I was finding an awful lot of those.
Really?
Yeah, those
Yeah, they're pretty.
they're common. That's what they use now.
Yeah.
We get an awful lot of Canadian coins.
You haven't saved everything you found then.
Only the very valuable
Oh,
things.
God, here we go again. I have no idea what this is all about.
It's gotta be solid gold.
Wow.
You think so?
Sure.
Well, at the very least, it's flaky. I don't know if it's solid gold or not. You said the camera shows the flakes on it. I
don't know what it is.
No
It
clue.
looks like some kind of an Indian,
The Iroquois used those to trade with Columbus.
Oh wow, we're going
for the armor.
now we're going past Samuel de Champlain and getting into the heavy stuff here. Any other very unique pieces here that you'd like to talk about? Some of these are religious medals. I don't know what that little tiny thing might be, but it was obviously sewn
Part of the
on.
rosary, huh?
You think it was part of a
Yeah,
rosary? It's
looks
very,
like three
There's
sides.
3 sides, yeah, there is 3 sides.
very possible. Some of these rings are extremely tiny, maybe a child's ring. I'm sorry, Calvin, I'm giving him a spaz attack here. Like, look at this little teeny tiny ring from a little girl maybe, or a little baby, and it fell off. Sometimes people wore these little rings on a pendant around their necks.
Do you remember the Washington Nationals?
Oh my, come on.
That was before the Senators, obviously. I think
Wow.
they left Washington in 55, maybe?
Calvin knows that stuff.
When did that?
He's thinking. The
No,
wheels
the-
are turning.
The Senators were called the Nationals. It's the same team. When they left to become the Twins in 1961, it was the Washington Senators. But for a while, the Senators were called the Nationals. And then they expanded, and a new Washington Senator team came in. Now they're the Texas Rangers. So the Minnesota Twins and the Texas Rangers were both Washington Senators, but that would be the original Washington
The
Senators.
Nationals,
They were for a while called the Nationals.
Mind you, these pins are made of tin, and so whatever surface there was on there gets a little pitted after a
Yeah.
while. This is something the history of which I find very interesting. I want you to tell me everything you can remember about it.
That was sticking out of the side of a bank. You couldn't see it, and I was running the detector up on the side of the bank.
A dirt bank, right?
A dirt bank, and it probably from the top of the bank down maybe was 12 inches down, and just a corner of it was sticking out. And it looked like a stick or something. I didn't even see it. Except the detector went off, and it comes up. It just looks like iron, but it's not. It's some kind of an alloy, and I don't know what it is. It could be a pot metal of some kind. But it comes up slightly above aluminum. So it could be brass or something, I don't know. And I knew something was there, and I just hit it, and that thing fell out. And when I showed it, Morris was with me, and when I showed it to Morris, I looked at it for a while. I couldn't figure out what it was, because first it looks like a toy, with a skull and crossbones and the laurel leaf around it. But it's way too well done for a toy. And then when I looked at the back, that gave me no clue. We were thinking belt buckle. And we didn't know what it was. So anyway, the place on the internet where you can post things you found to get information, I did post that. And I got some answers some people didn't know. And then one person wrote to me and said, go to this particular website. The guy sells antiques and you're going to see it. And I went to that website and there it was.
Come on, a picture of it?
Yeah, and that's the front of a lock. Thus the shape of it. And what it is, they gave the name of the company. I wrote it down somewhere, but they were from, I believe, was New England or Boston somewhere.
Maybe, yeah.
And it was made somewhere around the 1850s. And this company specialized in making cast iron fences and ornamental metalwork for graveyards. Thus, that was probably a lock on a gate at a graveyard with the skull and crossbones. But there's no graveyard anywhere around there.
Around, we don't
Where I
know where
was.
all the graveyards was. There have been a number of books and people have gone to seek out the old graveyards to update the gravestones. And this has been going on since the 1930s in the North Country, and Clyde Rabideau Sr.'s done a couple of books and spent several years trying to update all the graveyards. But there's still some that are long since buried. They've just tried to are still in the process of recovering the graveyard up there in Schuyler Falls behind Rock Store. And I'm pleased to see some of these old family burial grounds that are finally being, I won't say restored, but at least cleaned up, and the stones are stood up, and somebody's taking care of them. And that's a good thing. So this was a lock. Many of the old locks, as you might know, had a swivel on the front. The keyhole was covered
Oh, maybe that's
when the
what it
swivel
was.
came down. And it's possible that this covered the keyhole so that it wouldn't rust out, and or just for ornamental purposes, and you'd open it up, put the key in, and then the thing would flip back down. That's
Could-
pure
could be right,
speculation.
Because this could be the like the pivot point there.
Yep.
Well, that very well may be.
That's just a guess, because I love old blocks, and I have a collection of many old blocks, but nothing
That's
as
fine.
cool as that. It would be a mistake. A lot of people would take something like this and run right out on the grinder, on the iron, you know what I mean, the wire brush, and try to clean it up. But that's not a good idea for old things. You're supposed to leave them in the condition you find them, I guess, right?
I think so. Morris and I were talking, and some of the coins, the silver coins, I've had some that I've messed with that I've buffed up because
Just
you know.
check it out, like that.
A 1939 quarter is not, it's still
Yeah.
a quarter, and they'll clean up real well.
But it's still silver, and you don't find them in circulation anymore unless you get really, really lucky. My wife was telling me, I wrote for the 60th anniversary of D-Day and for Memorial Day about the fact that she lost her young brother in Italy during the Second World War before his 20th birthday. And we were fortunate enough to end up with his ditty bag from the service, and in there are, a pack of cards and personal toiletry items and a handful of change, some for
Yeah.
some foreign coins, and like a 1919 penny. That was still in circulation in the 1940s when he went to war. Amazing but true. These things we've seen. I don't know if that was an actual license plate, but the veterans used to send them out. Remember VFW?
You don't see them anymore. but
This
I
is
remember 'em.
this is
They kept
disabled American veterans. I remember the message almost verbatim about how this postage guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You got this in the mail, and you're expected to send
yeah,
a contribution. Now they give you labels, right? Address labels that
yeah,
stick-on labels for
Probably,
your mail.
yeah.
But just a lot of tremendous memories, and a lot of these are a lot of buttons. You found quite a few buttons.
Yeah, a lot of buttons, a lot of military buttons, some that you can't identify, everything from work clothes to you name it. A lot of tags.
I can't see much on this. There might be numbers on this, though.
I don't know.
There might be numbers stamped into this.
Yeah, it's something
It
like
looks like somebody hit it with a stamp and stamped numbers. I can almost make out a 9,
Yeah.
but maybe it's my imagination.
A locker
You know where a
Tag,
locker tag?
probably.
I'll tell you
The
where
key
I
was
remember
attached to it.
a key.
Yeah, you could probably rent it at the beach or something.
Well, this is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Because as a very small child,
Yeah.
living in Westchester County in Thornwood, New York, my brother would take me to the municipal pool. And you gotta, oh yeah, there's numbers in there. I can almost see them. 6, an upside, no, it's a 9. That's a 1. It could be 419, but in any case, you got a tag. And you stick it in the pants of your bathing suit, and then you go back and you get your locker key or whatever it was. Yeah. Oh, you got more over here.
this is just
More coins. Wait a minute. Here's a little car.
cars and
Isn't that cute? Little tiny car. And that baby's more than a couple years old. Isn't that cute?
I was down the beach one day, and this woman was there with 2 little boys, and they were playing in the sand, and they were playing with little cars. And I could see them up the end there. A couple minutes later, a little kid ran over to me and said, "Mister, can you find my cars? I lost them." I said, "Sure." So I walked up the beach, I found his cars.
Did you really?
Yeah, I gave him his cars.
Oh, what a good guy you are,
I know,
Gene.
but that's not all. Then I went back down. A couple minutes later, kid came back and said, "Mister, I lost my car."
Oh, he was. Yeah,
He's buried.
that's a little
I
game.
look up there, he's buried him.
He's putting them on. I love it. Did you? Who dug this whistle up? You did.
That's from St. I go up to St. Lawrence County. A lot of the stuff's from up
You
in
do?
there.
What?
Now-
Just because you like to go up
Well,
there? or what?
my children live in, my son and my daughter live in Potsdam.
Oh,
and,
my goodness.
So
My old stamping grounds up there. I'll be
Yeah.
going up to Coles Creek the last 2 weeks in July for camping. Oh, that's a great old whistle.
that came from a place called the Tannery. And my son took me there, it's over on the Racket River, and it used to be an old tannery building back. Closed, they said, around 1910 or something, and we were
Wow.
rooting around there. It's just a very pretty place. I chased the maps up there.
You know, it's like the rest of us might take our camera with us when we go somewhere, and you take just put the metal detector in the back. Always keep it in the back of the car, do you?
Yeah.
Do you carry a leather bag or something?
Yeah, I
put
have it's just like a pouch that we put stuff in, and yeah, most places we go to and we find metal or something, we just pick it up and throw it out. Or glass. You find glass and
A lot of trash.
trash, so if we find it, we pick it up and chuck it.
Morris, I'm just looking over here. Oh, boy, there's an old 50-cent piece over there.
This is my better one. I found this about 3 days ago. It's the oldest American coin I found. It's 110 years old. And I found that at St. Armand's Beach,
Gosh, I love it.
in a place I probably went over 100 times. And every time it storms up a little bit, everything changes. And even though you've been over and over and over, and the next storm, something new might be there. And
You know, these
that's my oldest American coin.
coins stayed in circulation for a long, long time.
Yeah.
As kids,
Yeah.
I can remember these coins in circulation in
Yeah.
the early 1940s, late
Yeah.
1930s,
Yeah.
when I was just a young kid.
Yeah.
Classic coin, even
Yeah.
of course, the Standing
this
Liberty
is another
50-cent
one.
piece
Yeah,
that
that's
that-
a 46,
that
I
many
believe.
of us are familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's 1937.
37th,
And
yeah.
guess
no.
why it's significant for me?
That's
That
when you
is
were born?
The year I was born.
Yeah, me-
1937.
Me too.
Really?
Yeah. March 37.
So there's no way we can tell whether this is the good side of the table or the bad side of the table. 1937. That was
Yeah.
a very good
This
year.
this is just a token I found. It was gold plated at one time, but it's just
A token?
it's a
You know,
what do they call it? Memorial token or
a
whatever.
commemorative token.
Commemorative token.
And there are many,
Yeah.
and some of them are getting to be quite valuable.
Yeah.
You know, you get
Yeah.
centennials, bicentennials, sesquicentennials, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
Big land acquisitions in our country's history.
Yeah.
Do you remember what this one was for?
Something about George Washington.
It just says George Washington Bicentennial.
Yeah, and it's there's a place in the back. I forget what it is, but it was celebrating George Washington's bicentennial.
Yeah.
And it's another state.
I'd have to have way better
Yeah,
trifocals.
he
than
probably
I
can
got.
read it. I don't read
I
too
am.
good.
I'm just trying to look at some of the neat stuff besides all the coins and there's a different kind of button.
I don't know what that is. Probably it's a
Yeah.
pair of work pants or something. Sometimes I just throw them in the bucket.
Well, it's different. It's a little bit unique, and I've
Yeah.
seen that kind of button before.
I don't know what that one's off of.
And to go with his emerald that he's.
Oh yeah, that wood.
This
that
is
beautiful-
solid gold
That
here.
beautiful emerald. Somebody actually wore that on their.
Well, I would think
stuck
so.
In their
Oh.
ear.
Yeah, I think so.
Looks like a fishing lure.
Nowadays, the way they pierce their bodies, it could have been worn almost any
That's
body
right,
part.
yeah.
But
And this,
we'll just pick ear, okay, for that one.
and this is a pin that
No, it isn't.
silver, and I cut it with a knife. I was cutting it out,
Oh,
and I cut it, but it was down in the ground about 3 inches.
a butterfly. That is still
Yeah.
in silver too.
Yeah, and
Isn't
that's
that
silver.
beautiful?
Yeah.
Well, we know we've also interviewed a guy who's a silversmith downtown who
could fix it.
who could fix that for
Yeah,
you. That's
yeah.
really quite beautiful and delicate. I love it.
And this, it's
That's got to be
odds and ends of ring.
Another expensive.
Very, very stone. Very, very expensive stone. This is sort of an interesting one. I sort of like it.
And who knows?
Who knows what it
Who
is?
knows? They could be real. I don't know. I can't
Who
tell.
knows?
Well, you know, there are people who can appraise some of this
Well,
stuff.
it's worth a lot of money if it isn't appraised. If I get it appraised, it may not be worth quite as much.
That's right. Right now, it's still worth an awful lot.
You guys are amazing. It's silver chains,
yeah.
right?
This had 3 diamonds in it, and they were diamonds. And I had them taken out, and I had a pin, or I guess necklace, a chain for my wife.
Oh, you did really?
Yeah.
And they were diamonds.
There were 3 diamonds in
Now,
it.
is that a money clip or what is it?
It was a money clip.
Money clip.
Yeah. So the diamonds are gone.
I hope that along the way
Yeah.
we're inspiring
I don't even
people.
know what that is. That's just something I picked up. No idea.
Yes, you know what it is. It's a replica of an arrowhead
Yeah. For
that
what?
somebody wore as a pendant.
Oh, is that right?
Wouldn't you guess, Gee? It's got a hole in it. It's a replica of an arrowhead that somebody wore
Yeah.
as a pendant.
Uh-huh.
It could be copper, hammered
Mm-hmm.
copper or something like that.
Mhm.
People wear all kinds of weird, some of the stuff. Who could ever tell what that was, for example?
Well, that's a fairly new penny. That's the way they come today.
Pennies are-
The pennies are, the
Dissolving.
metal they put in them is not good. When you
That's
get,
a penny?
that's a penny. Here's another one.
You gotta be
And it's
kidding.
probably not 4 or 5 years old. And the alloys are just
They're
very
just not
bad.
very good anymore.
In 10
huh?
years, you won't be able to find any coins because the alloys are really, really bad. And it gets in the quarters and everything else. It's just,
Fine.
These are all wheat pennies on over here. And you look at these,
They're
every
still
one
good.
of them looks relatively decent.
And they're
Wheat
100
pennies are a good grade of Canadian coin. The new ones, the new pennies they're putting out, you'll see they literally dissolve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever metal is in them,
Yeah, you're right. Now,
The
see, if
alloys
you
are
had
bad.
mentioned that, I wouldn't have known that this was a penny until I look at it.
yeah.
yeah, you'll see, you'll bring it up and it looks like somebody took a bite out of them.
Yeah.
I guess they just dissolve.
I'm looking for an old, fairly new quarter just to show them.
That's absolutely amazing. You know, this is something else I wanted to show while we're talking about it. I didn't realize until several months ago, and we're recording this almost in the summer of 2004, that you can go online and you can type in your neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
and get a satellite photograph of your house, literally of your house and your driveway and your garage taken from outer space.
No kidding.
You remember an Orwell book called 1984, where we thought Big Brother was going to watch
Yeah,
us?
they're watching. Huh?
Now, who, and you remember Gary Powers and the spycrafts and so on, but by the 1960s, we could go and take pictures from 100 miles out in space, and now from even farther than that, and we can map all kinds of things. And you got a circled area. Want to tell us what that is?
There's a fellow who lives around the corner here that owns the fields around here. And I was talking to him and he said, I'll show you where to go. And him and we drove back into his field and there was like a raised area. And he told me that when he was a kid many years ago, he was plowing back there and they turned up pieces of dishes and so forth. So he said there was something there. And when I look on the terrace over here, that satellite shot shows, well, it's hard to see, but on the screen, on the CRT, it's very, very clear. On the picture, it's not printed out
Yeah,
that way.
but it's a
You
square
can see
space
the
in that corner,
there's
yeah.
a rectangle there. And when we go back there, and I've been back there a couple of times with the detectors, I'll always turn up right in the middle of a hayfield. You'll pick up a couple belt buckles and looks like horse tack, like something off a bridle, old spoons, and so there had to be probably a farm there at one time, which dates at least well back before the 1930s.
And that could have delineated the perimeter of an old barn.
Yeah, I think so. Somebody was telling me that when you backfill an area, like if you have a foundation and they backfill it, when the things grow there, because there's different soil, the plants grow at a different rate, and for many, many years, many decades, you'll see the outline of the foundation.
Why do you think these space photographs show old roads that haven't been around for 500 years, and old riverbeds in countries that haven't been around in thousands of years. And when you learn how to read it, especially when they're in color, it's amazing what you can
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
determine from outer space. This
What-
is a whole new technology that's really fascinating to me.
I use that a lot of times if I'm trying to go someplace, I can look on there and see which is the easiest way to get to it. And there's some places I want to go yet that shows me how to get there and where roads were and so forth.
You know, I've said many times, and I think I mentioned in the column in writing about you, when I first came up here, I was handed a copy of an old map from this area that had been touched up by one of the historians of the day with pencil marks showing where all the ghost towns were in Clinton County. And I seem to remember the number 80 or 85. And as you well know, just from doing what you're doing, there were towns and places that you'd never guess. Today, thriving towns where there were mill towns and mining towns here in Clinton County. And, you know, we couldn't afford to go on expensive vacations to the Caribbean islands, so we throw our kids in the car with a metal detector and take a ride into the woods and, like you, find an old foundation. And, you know, we'd come home with I came home with a beautiful ornate metal stagecoach step. It sat next to my fireplace for years. To me, that was a wonderful, wonderful treasure. And there were places with beautiful names like Verona, you know, just up here past Harkness. You walk in the woods up there, and there were several old ghost towns, and you'll just come upon, right in the middle of the densest woods, an old mine shaft or an old wooden foundation, or you look for a lilac bush and you know it was near a home or an outhouse somewhere, and you can dig up all kinds of stuff. So it doesn't sound to me like this little fun thing that you guys are doing is going to wane soon. Have you got any special places you would like to visit this summer?
There's one place that I've been looking at on the Saranac and south of just south of the extension, Turnpike extension. Not these maps, but another set of maps. It shows where there was quite a few buildings there, and it's not there now. There's nothing there now, but it shows. The only thing is I can figure out how to get there because it's on the north side of the river. And the north side of the river is kind of hard to get unless you walk in from Adirondack Lane and hike up there. So one of these days I want to.
Well, I got to tell you that that was a favorite spot of mine even before I owned a metal detector. And I was walking the woods because in those days I was looking for Pike's Cantonment. It was a fabulous, huge place that everybody lost track of when it was burned down in 1814 after the War of 1812. The raiders came through from Canada and burned the place down, and they were all log buildings. It was a very big cantonment, and nobody paid much attention to it, even though local people knew where it was into the late 1800s. Then all of a sudden, in the 1930s and 40s, it became a mystery. Where was Pike's Cantonment? And it still is a bone of contention as to the precise place, but we believe that City Clerk Keith Herculow has located the exact spot. And you're not too far off from the places you're talking about up there by that last curve by the end of the runway, going around Route 22 south of town. And wouldn't you love to? I mean, people are not allowed to dig in Fort Scott and Fort Moreau and Fort Brown and the forts, and you know, but you'd love to get permission to see what you could find in those places. But how about you, Morris? Any special place you'd like to go? Or
I'm a follower here when it comes to this.
Oh, yeah.
He's does all the investigating, and we
Well,
go. And
It sounds to me like you get it just about as much fun in trying to look
That's
this
very-
stuff up and get on the internet and see what you can find. And
Yeah, I do a lot of that and find to get the information about what was there and.
when you can tap into that much knowledge
Oh, yeah.
instantaneously via the internet now, it's like tapping into the great human mind. I have, as Calvin knows and many of my friends know, I have a piece of the Hindenburg. That's bona fide. I've got the provenance. My father happened to having my father was a minister, traveling evangelist, and he had services in Lakehurst, New Jersey, like the day after, and one of his parishioners happened to be a guy that was on the ground crew and had picked up pieces of this thing and threw it in the trunk of his car. Said, "Hey, preacher, would you like a piece of that thing that burned up yesterday?" And my dad said yes. So he took a ink pen, fountain pen, and wrote on it where it was and when it was and the exact date, cut a piece out of the paper, the story about it the next day, and mounted it on a piece of cardboard and kept that together on his desk right up until the day he died. When just before that, he handed it to me and said, "Keep this." So I went on the internet, and there's still still lots going on in Lakehurst, New Jersey, at that naval base and that site, and all the people who have pieces of fabric from the Hindenburg, but not much else, are saying they can't figure out what this laminated piece of wood shaped like Australia, about 4.5 inches wide, and about 2 inches thick, where it came from. The best information is a bar rail in the bar, because it was pretty neat thing, the Hindenburg one. But it's fun, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Because it certainly brings history back to the present time.
Want to talk about those class rings you found?
I would, of course, we got to get around to the reason we came in the first place. When you do the history of something, if you know it was something that was important to somebody, isn't it nice to be able to return it to them or their kids or their grandchildren? And this happened to you with a couple of rings, and I want you to tell the story of both of those rings in your own words right now, Gene.
I found a one ring last year, and it was in the lake, but it was in a couple inches of water in some shale rock that was standing up straight, that runs out in the lake. It goes out from maybe a quarter of a mile out in the lake, and you can walk out there. And the detector went off, and I reached down and moved a couple rocks, and I pulled up a man's class ring, Plattsburgh High School, class of 1967. And it was really in good shape. It didn't look like it was chewed up. It hadn't been moving around the lake because it wasn't chipped. So when I came home, I was thinking, gee, well, who do I know would have graduated from Plattsburgh in around 1967? So I called a friend of mine, Kenny Baker.
My nephew, by the way.
I worked with Kenny up at Altona, and I gave him the initials on the ring, and Kenny said, "Oh yeah, he gave me the guy's name, and he said, just a minute, I'll give you his phone number." And he went and he gave me his
What do you
phone
think?
number.
Isn't that beautiful to know who to go to?
Yeah, well, and the fellow that the initials in the ring, I forget what the middle initial was, but it was AP, or anyway, whatever was in the ring was not the initials that the guy goes by. The fellow's his name is Tony Pinson, and in the ring I think it was A. Pinson, like Anthony. So I probably wouldn't have figured it
Princeton,
out.
Prinsen.
Is that what it
His
is?
last name.
And Kenny knew him very well.
Kenny knew Tony, as everybody knows Tony.
Well, anyway, I got a hold of. I called him and he said, "Geez, he was tickled to death." He came out the house to get his ring, and he was telling me that he lost it on prom night. I guess that was a big party area, and he said prom night
Right near
there.
St. Armand's, right near Fantasy Kingdom, right?
Right, it was at Fantasy
There
Kingdom.
was a dock there.
See, I don't remember seeing a dock, ever seeing a dock, because I wasn't, when I was in the Air Force, but I wasn't maybe not paying attention. Tony said he reached in the lake and it fell off, and he said he remembers it going. And it was at night, and it's history.
Tony remembers that the cold beer was off the end of the dock.
Well,
And that Tony was reaching down to get a cold beer off the end of the dock, and then reaching over, the ring fell off. That could happen to the best of us on prom
Yeah.
night or any other night.
Yeah, so it stayed there, and obviously, and when Tony and I walked out there, he said, "Oh yeah," I said, "I was right there." He said, "That's where I lost it." And he pointed right to the area, and it was right. And I hate to think how many times over the 30 years I've been around here that I've walked over that, or how many times Morris has walked over that, or how many thousands of people have stepped over it. It just happened to be
Just
there.
happened to be
Yeah.
there. And and if our viewers don't know, just by hearing this story, Here's a guy that was so thrilled.
Yeah, he was
Get
very
that ring
pleased to get back.
He will talk to anybody, anywhere about what an angel of mercy you are to get that ring back to him. He'll tell
Pay
anybody.
attention to this now.
I'm listening,
didn't-
I'm listening.
He didn't even. He was so distraught when he lost that ring. He wouldn't even tell his mother that
Yeah,
it
he
was
told me
lost.
that.
His mother is now
Yeah.
deceased, and Tony has talked about losing that ring many times over the years and never dreamed
That was good.
that you would be. You know what it's like being at the right place at the right time.
Well, how would you feel if somebody a year later called up from
Well,
Hawaii and said,
yeah, well,
Gordy, I got your ring? Huh?
that's what I was thinking about
And
when
that's
I talked. when I
that's
talked
liable
you.
to happen, because most people, if they find it, what are they, first of all, what are they going to do with it?
Has no
Yeah.
value.
And it's just
Except
the
that it-
thrill of being able to get it back to where it belongs is what.
Yeah.
The
You
most
know, I
important
find the
thing.
same thing happens to me as people because they know I write a column and I'm interested in history and do this show with Calvin for so long. They give me old photographs, and I mentioned it before. People our age, not that we're old, Morris, but people our age. How many photographs do you have where there's nothing written on the back?
I know what.
And so they're your grandparents or great grandparents, and when you and I are not around anymore, who's going to care or who's going to know? So they give me these old photographs, and I'm like genius. I'm trying like crazy to find out where was that house on Back Street in Saranac, for example, in one series. And if I can find them, like this one set of a whole album of photographs from Saranac, I tracked down half the people or their
Wow.
descendants.
Wow.
And yes, I was brought up in that house, and that's my grandmother, and her name was Sarah, and she lived right there. That's her standing on that porch, and sending me photographs of the house taken like a year later, and that's
Oh,
fun.
it's fun stuff. Yeah.
Okay, but that's not the last of the ring stories. There's another good one.
Well, yeah, this year, maybe last month or so ago, about 30 feet from where I found the other ring,
Amazing.
I found another one. Well, see, the lake, and I know it wasn't there a couple of days before, because what happens, the lake, you get a storm, and all that sand that was up there is now over here, and all this is everything turned over. Anyway, I found a woman's ring, and this was dated class of 1963 for Old Orchard High School, which I took to be Old Orchard Beach, Maine. It was in very, very good shape. And-
4 years older than the other one.
Yeah, and this wasn't even chipped. It wasn't chipped at all. And like I say, 30 feet from where the other one was. So I sent some emails to Old Orchard Beach High School, and they wrote back, and I told them the initials of the class, and they wrote back and said, we didn't have anybody graduate at that time. So I wrote again. I said,
With those initials.
with those initials, I said, we look again, but this time try maybe a year before, a year after. And they wrote back and said, no, we didn't have anybody that graduated then, and maybe there's another Old Orchard High School. I looked around the internet and went through, there's clearinghouses of all public schools, public and private schools. So I checked with them, and there was none carrying the name of Old Orchard High School. So I then found there's an internet newspaper for Maine that for tourism and so forth. So I sent them an email, told them what I had found, and told them that the high school could not find any records, but I still believe it's up there. Well, they were real nice, and the woman was taken by. She said, "Oh, let me look." A couple of days later, she wrote back and told me that there was somebody listed on classmates.com.
Oh,
which
I've seen that. It popped up on my screen about 4 billion times.
Yeah, what they want to sell you addresses, but there's a lot of information you can get for nothing there, and you can register your name there as graduating from such and such a high school at such and such a time.
Yeah.
Well, apparently this woman had the initials, did this many years ago. So the woman from Maine said, there's somebody there on Classmates that has those initials. So I checked, I went there, and then I pulled up her profile, which is information about her, and the name changed, which would be her married name. So now I had her married name and the high school, and I started, you can do like phone number research
Sure you can.
different ways, and there's a couple different ways to do it. Anyway, I did it the first way, and I didn't turn up much, and then I got down to where I turned up 6 different names because it's a very strange spelling. And I called one guy, and he said, I told him what I wanted. Because you got to be careful, because everybody thinks,
Oh, yes, you do.
what are you selling?
What are you doing? What's this all about?
So I called the guy, and I told him what I had found, and I was looking for somebody by the name of Gail Tuchek, I believe the name is. And it was her ex-husband, and they had
But they hadn't been married since.
1967. And he said, I
love it.
don't know where
I'm
she
not
is.
laughing because they got divorced, but because,
Yeah, he said, I don't know where she is. I said, I don't have her phone number. And he said, but we have a son. I'll give you my son's phone number. Maybe he'll give it to you. So
isn't this
he gave me the son's phone number. I called the son and told him what I was about. And he said he would give the number to his mother. I waited about 2 weeks or whatever, and I didn't hear anything. I thought that was kind of bizarre. So I don't want to bug the people, but I called him back, and this guy's girlfriend answered and said, "Oh, I'm glad you called back because he lost your number."
Oh,
Anyway, so she gave the number to the woman, and the woman called me, and she told me that it was certainly her ring, and that in 1964 she moved, something like 64, she moved to Vermont, and they would come to Keysville to visit friends. And one of the trips, she met some guys from the Air Force Base, and they were out.
Now we're getting down to the nitty gritty here, right?
Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I remember that weekend.
But she said we had a big party out at this. She said, I don't know the name of it, but it was. I know you drove out of the city, and it was a beach, and they had a beer pavilion and so forth. And she said, now you know how they throw kids in the water. She threw me in the water. Well, I know pretty much where St. Armand's Pavilion was. Well,
I know very well where it was.
That's not where the ring was. The ring was over in Fantasy Kingdom. So the ring had traveled by crow's fly about a quarter of a mile west. But I hate to think how many times it had gone in and out.
Back and forth.
Because it
still wasn't
it was
going
there was
down.
about 8 inches of water, and it was only under the sand by 2 inches. So anyway, I mailed it to her, and that's back in Rhode
Hopefully she
Island.
enjoyed it.
I hope so.
wish she could see this because she hasn't sent you a thank you note yet.
Well, I haven't heard from her yet, but
Maybe she will. Or
It was-
maybe
it
she
was-
lost your number.
it was more fun to find out, to do the chasing around, and
There's one little tiny sliver of information which Jean didn't include, and the fact that she had a different name at another time. Tell me that.
yeah, the reason that high school didn't know her name was she told me that the initials in the ring were GR, and which stood for Ratcliffe, I believe.
Right.
She said that really wasn't my name legally. Her name, I think, was Allie. That was her stepfather's name. So probably the school records were under
Her-
Allie,
Her birth name.
her birth name.
Her mother remarried, took
and
her
you know, back then,
stepfather's
yeah.
name. Yeah.
And back then, that was done. You know,
Oh,
people
sure,
go
all the
through,
time.
you know. So that's why when I wrote to the school, they said, you know, they probably took a cursory look and said, no name, no guy. So
Isn't that incredible? I love it.
it was kind of fun.
Actually, we're going to take a look at some of the metal detectors. Anything on this table that anybody, Morris, that you want to show us that we haven't looked at specifically?
Something not worth very much, but might find a little interesting is this.
Oh, what is that?
You know, I think it's just women put powder in it or something. But what I found in it was marijuana.
This guy's attracted to
yeah.
drug
About the same
paraphernalia.
time I found these, I found that, and it had marijuana in it. So that was another place.
Probably wasn't worth smoking by the time you got to
Yeah, I don't know.
Isn't that very interesting?
But that's the only reason I kept it, because it's got a story.
Just wonder, and stories that you don't even know. Look at that Marksman's.
Yeah, I don't really know what that's from. The pegs have been rusted off, and
Well, if I really had good eyes, I could see what that says on the back. But it's a
it's silver.
It says B period B and B.
So he thinks it's out of Philadelphia,
It's underneath his PHI.
and but it says silver on it.
Yeah.
So
That's not an Army marksmanship badge, is it, Gordy?
It could very well be, although I wasn't in the Army. I can only guess that I've seen these, but I don't know what it would be on.
because
I'm sure you. I'm sure it was
City
a-
Army bivouacked out here in Point of Rush
Oh, boy.
from before World War One.
Yeah.
Away
And
and,
then later on, there were
before
maneuvers
World
all
War
the way
II.
up the
Yeah.
Saranac and
Mhm.
or 1916,
So it could have been lost back
17.
then.
I'd heard that Teddy Roosevelt lost his badge up here.
Okay,
somewhere.
never
Well,
mind
that's probably
Samuel de
it right
Champlain.
He didn't lose any armor, did he? Silver armor.
He probably lost that one there.
Well, I should have been looking at this stuff with this loop. You didn't dig this one up. You're using this just to see things. Oh, yes, that's a microphone.
This probably came from a Cracker Jack box. I don't know. So maybe some kid made it in school. It looks it's like some
Who would know? But
Who would
it's,
know,
it's
eh?
bound to have a story. You
Yeah.
speak about Cracker Jack boxes.
yeah.
Cracker Jack company still going strong. I was brought up in the tail end of the days of vaudeville, and when I was in college, I used to go to vaudeville shows in Rochester and Buffalo, and they'd still be handing Cracker Jack boxes and still be on the stage saying, "Guaranteed, one box contains a diamond ring worth
Yeah.
thousands of
Yeah.
dollars. Get your Cracker Jack."
Well, that's not it.
Well, there was nothing in any of those boxes worth $1,000, but I can remember as a kid.
They had all kind of goodies in them.
Oh yeah.
All that I can remember, those little things that you'd blow on, it would spin and make a siren sound.
Yeah.
And
I don't know what that. Some kid probably made that in home ec or not home
Yeah.
ec, but in shop.
tremendously interesting things here. And all these coins you found too?
Yeah, they're just. I just rolled them up.
Yeah.
You weren't kidding when you said pounds and 60, 70 pounds worth of coins. It's amazing.
You dig a hole, you don't get a coin every time.
But you get a hole.
You get a hole every time.
If you brought the dirt home, you'd have something to talk about, wouldn't you, huh? This is very interesting. Kent, if we're going to stop just a moment, then we're going to take a walk over and take a look at these amazing electronic devices that can tell us what's buried underneath the ground. Start the camera.
I can adjust the sound.
I want to hear the sound. I love sound. I'm a radio person.
See that?
You got it? Have you got it rolling?
See where it's hitting? It's showing about a penny. There should be a penny in there. In that. Oh, I lost it. That's the way.
Oh,
There it is again. No, it's not a penny. It's less than a penny.
so it's a half penny? What the heck?
English halfpenny.
Is it? Is that what it is?
Start digging.
I'm digging. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not going to dig up his
I was
yard.
talking to
But
us
it-
earlier. What?
What did it? What
Oh, it's that thing. He's got something there.
What is that?
does it
See?
show?
Between a penny and a quarter. Doesn't know what it is.
Or is it showing it?
See?
It
See?
shows right here. But
See, on 25 cents, penny, dime, 25 cents, 50 cents, dollar.
Don't you know that
And then here's gold, but all your trash metals come in with gold.
oh, they do.
So I keep digging up a lot of trash, but I haven't hit any gold yet. See? There it is. This one's got an option. If it's underground, if you want to know exactly where to dig, you push this button here, hold it down, and the loudest noise is where you dig.
Well, that shows right in the middle too. They weren't kidding.
So there's where you dig.
And then a voice says, "Dig, hurry up! It's right there. What's the matter, Morris?" What was that voice when you turned it on? I thought I heard somebody saying
I'd
time
have
for
to-
lunch or
I'd have
something.
to turn the voice on so it'll tell you to do everything. But
Oh, it does, huh?
let
You
me
say you never.
let me see if I can do this here. I never use the voice.
Custom.
I don't know where I get the voice.
It says coins,
Custom.
jewelry, 0.
It says a battery. That's a battery power. You got left.
Oh my goodness.
Let me see that coin again. No, I still ain't got the voice. I don't know where I'm going to get that voice. Why don't you do something with Gene? See if I can find my voice. I never use it.
You know, we were talking just before he started the camera again. During the Depression, people lost their faith in banks, and they hid their money in the bed springs and the mattresses. And Morris, you were telling me about Ron Santor's grandfather.
Yeah, he, of according to Ron, he used to keep his money during the Depression because of the banks going sour, and he underneath the fence posts around the house. And I don't know if he had it in a jar or a can, but in case the house burnt, he put the post back over it, and that way it was safe for fire.
But he never found any.
But Ron never really doesn't really know if his grandfather ever left money there or not. So there could be money, maybe not. We don't know. Huh? Ron doesn't know.
Have you gone around the fence line with the?
No, I haven't. No.
Because as I said before, even when we were kids, we would take an old can, a Maxwell House can, and put a few quarters or a few pennies in it and hide it. And where people might pick a tree as a landmark.
Mm-hmm.
But as Calvin said, if you found something under a tree, chances are excellent that got in there before the tree even grew.
That's right. That's right.
Especially if you had to dig around under the roots.
And
and
cedar tree that big was where I got that button. So I went in that far under the tree. So
isn't that so fascinating?
So it's been there a while, that button.
How often do you guys go out? Once a week?
Whenever I've got a couple hours, I'm not doing anything, I go down. I'll run to the beach here, St. Armand's.
It's not very far away from here.
Not far, and I go over the same spot over and over and over again, but I still do it.
The reason I'm familiar with where that place was at St. Armand's Beach is because when I was a young announcer, we used to broadcast live out there very often. Believe me, there were some awesome parties at St. Armand's Beach, and we've seen photographs from the early 20th century of the old beach attire and all the beautiful beach chairs that were out there, and it was a moving, grooving place.
It's a good place. We pulled a lot of Indian head pennies out of there, old quarters, a lot of mercury dimes.
Oh, no kidding.
And like I said, the lake will change. You can be there one day and there'll be nothing, and then the surf will change up and turn. You might also be known, you can't just go there because you have to. Morris and I have permits that you have to file for the state.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, you can't go. You can walk there, but to use this equipment on any state property, you have to have permission. You have to file with them, and they'll issue a permit, and which is good for the year. And they tell you what you can do, what you can't do, where you can go. And basically, you're confined to the beach because, and rightfully so, they don't want you to dig anything up. And also, anything you find over $10 in value, you have to give to the state. We've never found anything.
There wasn't one thing over $10 that we saw today, that's for sure. All right.
No, this is just a different one. There's all different ones. This is very straight up, and it gives you, an audio indication, and then there's a graph. And it tells you what, supposedly what is there. The one thing Morris mentioned is that when you get down into this range, for example, that Canadian $2 bill indicates as a penny. Well, it's really indicating the alloy. So that.
Oh, I see.
And then you'll notice that down here, from the low end, you get down into 5 cent, and you're into the gold area. But the gold is also in the same area as pull tabs and foil.
Oh, boy.
So this one's a little bit, this is a very good machine, but it doesn't separate. That one will give you the alloy number. And this is the one I use most of the time. This one will give you a number. There's no speaker on this one, you have to wear headsets. This one will give you an alloy number. She's not coming up because I don't have the headset on. See, it's coming up as a 95 here, which is a maximum alloy. But it's coming up as a high number, meaning it's a different alloy other than aluminum, but it doesn't show up as silver. So you take the two answers and say, well, it's a high number, it doesn't show up as silver, but I know it's not aluminum, so it's a little bit of guesswork and a little bit of calculation. And then you dig a hole and get a bottle cap.
There you go.
Whatever works.
Oh, yeah.
That's half the fun.
Hey, some old bottle caps are fun to find too, aren't they?
Oh, sure.
There's not a beer is made anymore,
Oh, that's true, too. We know people who collect. How many bottle caps did you collect as a kid? I bet you, I don't know if either, well, Morris might be old enough to remember. We used to take the bottle caps and they would have a cork insert. Take the cork insert out,
Right.
scrape it out, put it on Oh no! Come on, you did that too,
Oh, yeah.
and then push it on the inside and wear that bottle cap proudly like a badge of courage. Wasn't that cool?
And use the orange crates for scooters.
Oh boy, did we do those! Lots of those in old roller skates,
Yeah.
and tack a can on for a headlight.
Sure.
And if you're Bill Cosby, you went downhill in Los Angeles, and you had a guy on the back was probably Fat Albert with the oil can go. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Oh, God. You know what, guys? This has been a blast. It's hard to believe. We've kicked an hour and a half right in the
You got it working?
right at bat side. Did you get that thing talking? Wait a
Let's see
minute.
if I can get it now.
This is Morris's young friend.
No. I got a talk button. I never use it. I didn't even... It's supposed to talk now. Well, I guess...
9, 5, speed at 1 inch.
See, I guess you got to push, go over it, and then you
They're
push
a little
it.
more advanced than the World War II minesweepers, you know. That's when they were doing
See,
that.
it told you 2 inches. Well, anything 2 inches means it's no deeper than 2 inches. It can be less.
Oh, I see what you mean.
See, that's the maximum. So you go over it, and then you push the button.
Doesn't
5, speed at 2 inches.
doesn't
They
say
just-
fool. It's right there on top of the ground, fool. You can pick it up with a spoon.
This one does everything, but his does the same thing except talk.
That's great. And I guess there must be an almost infinite variety of kinds of metal detectors.
You have it say Spanish?
No, well, I guess you probably could get it from the company, but
Yeah, Spanish doubloon, quick dig. Morris Landry, thanks so much for being with us here today.
glad to do it.
Gene Schneider, this has been terrific. Been an awful lot of fun. I'll tell Jack that you offered us coffee and we refused. No, I'm just kidding. I see Jack every Wednesday, whether I need it or not, and we spend a lot of time telling old war stories and talking about our childhoods and everything else in the world. But it's, I hope we've proved that something that we've underlined so many times on this show and elsewhere, that there are a lot of fun things happening here in the North Country. This is just another hobby that people can get really passionate about, and maybe, just maybe, because of this show here today, people will be running to the nearest outlet store or sports store saying, can you buy, I don't even know if you can buy metal detectors in this town, can you? You send away for yours? Or
Yeah,
go
most of them come through mail order.
through the mail order?
Different companies.
If you want them, you can find them.
Yeah, they're there.
If you build them, they will come.
Takes a lot of practice. It's just like fishing. You can have the best equipment, and the kid with the stick and the line is going to come along sometime, and if he knows how to do it.
You take your 5-year-old grandson and he catches the biggest trout every time.
Absolutely.
I love it. Again, thanks so much. We won't call your wife Chicken, but she just kind of
Oh, yeah,
introduced us. Linda said, just that's where they are right there. I'm working in the garden. And my wife would be so far away you wouldn't even see her when you arrived at the house.
You
One-
have time to talk to us.
Oh, she's busy around this beautiful place. It's really nice out here at Point of Rush, but it's great in the North Country to raise a family and live and work and discover new things every day. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner